How you doing this morning?
Good. How are you, sir?
Doing pretty good. Pretty early start. Probably gonna hit the gym after this.
That's exactly what I'm doing.
No.
I got the gym threads on.
Yeah. What? For me, it's chest and back day. What about you?
Today is shoulders and bicep day.
Nice, nice.
I got to try to bulk up to look like these these Cold Slither characters.
Yeah, I'm in a weight cut right now. Trying to get as thin as I can for summer. So, even though I'm from kind of a younger generation, Gen Z still kind of has a little bit of an attachment to GI Joe. So my first question for you is what drew you to this obscure episode of GI Joe?
I mean, I'm old enough that I watched it in real time when it aired. So I was all in on GI Joe in the '80s. Collected. I had all the toys or whatever my parents got me. And then as an adult, when eBay became a thing, then yeah, I started buying like here's my Thunder Machine. Like I got quite the collection. So for me, it actually I have you know Cobra tattoos. I got Optimus Prime. Like I'm a toy guy. So for me, it was kind of surreal, honestly, to be involved in this. It's amazing.
So, nowadays GI Joe can be seen as kind of campy and with other kind of nostalgic properties getting reboots. Where do you see GI Joe going in the future?
I mean, it's. I think with anything, it's kind of gone up and down. I'll say this: like they haven't gotten the movies right. Um, so that's been unfortunate. But with the new toy line, the classified series, I think that's definitely reinvigorated the line. I think there's a lot of people collecting GI Joe again, and the fact that all the cartoons are on YouTube, they're on Tubi, they're very readily available. Um, I would love to think that and it's a real old. I mean, it started in the '60s. You know what I mean? It's a real old American IP. It's a real American hero. So, I hope it keeps, it means, the thing about G.I. Joe is just to a lot of us, it means a lot. I mean, I'm one of those people that it actually, when I was a kid, it really, really meant a lot to me. And, I just hope it just keeps going. I think you can learn a lot of great lessons from G.I. Joe if you're a young kid, all about, honor, bravery, honesty, you know, justice, like all of these great traits that I think, are just good. So I hope it goes on forever.
So, kind of getting into more of the character side of the project. What's worse, battling GI Joe or trying to survive in the music industry?
Oh man. I mean, the music industry, uh, I guess you have to be a chameleon and you have to learn to adapt and you have to roll with punches. So, I think both keep you on your toes. Um, I'm grateful that I've been able to be a full time musician for a long time, but I have to adapt. And even though I go on tour, I still come home and play gigs at weddings and bars, and you're always just kind of looking to supplement the income because record sales really aren't a thing so much anymore. And So you just have to, as long as people keep wanting to hear this stuff live, I can survive. So, you just have to kind of bob and weave and adapt and be able to be okay with pivoting if you need to.
You mentioned playing weddings. How often do you play metal at these weddings?
Literally never. It's funny. Like I'll joke around sometimes when someone will call me for a gig, and they'll, if they know what I do in some of these other bands, they're like, "Hey, so what's your repertoire?" And I go, "Anything that I don't play on tour is what I'll play at these." I mean, I do kind of everything, man. I sing Bruno Mars songs, I sing Beatles songs, I sing, Tom Petty songs, like whatever people want to hear is what I've kind of, which a lot of people may poo poo that, but I think when you make a living, where your sole purpose is to entertain people, much like a DJ, you become attuned to what you think people want to hear. And, I think a lot of that comes into when I write songs, and I just try to always write something that I think is going to, you know, people will enjoy. At least that's always the hope, you know.
Uh, if Cold Slither could cover any of those songs, like a Bruno Mars song or anything, which song would be perfect for Cold Slither to turn into something metal?
Um, and I mean, unfortunately, much of the pop stuff I don't think would lend itself. I think Cold Slither would do great covering like a Johnny Cash song, just because there's some rebel attitude in that. Maybe some Tom Petty songs would be cool to cover. That's actually a pretty good idea. I never even thought of that. Yeah, I don't know, man. Some kind of, maybe Folsom Prison Blues, because it's a song about being in jail, and these guys are probably always trying to evade capture. So that's a pretty good idea, actually.
In you mentioned that you're a kind of an '80s toy collector. If you could bring any '80s toy memorabilia on stage and turn it into like an instrument or a prop on stage, what would it be, and why is it the aircraft carrier from GI Joe?
Touche, bro. Yeah, use it as like a drum riser.
Put it on top of a Marshall.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that would be, yeah. You know what? I don't even have a flag. It's funny. There's that meme that always comes around at Christmas time, celebrating 36 years of not getting the flag for Christmas. Um, and I probably could get a flag, but my wife would certainly not be cool with me being like, "Hey, I need 7.5 feet of space in our house for this toy." I occupy all of our closets, and I mean, I have toys everywhere. I collect those. I collect '80s skateboard decks. Um, it's my wife always jokes, like, if someone were to come over, they'd be like, "Where's your son at?" We don't have kids, and I'm like, right here.
Uh, let's say you're stuck on a tour bus with Cobra Commander, and you could only listen to 3 albums together. Which albums would you both agree on?
Oh man, what would Cobra Commander listen to? I feel like Cobra Commander would listen to like, I don't know why, but I feel like he'd be one of those like super villainous dictators that listens to like opera music for some reason. You know what I mean? Or classical music. So probably some kind of classical music, and then I would force him to listen to some Black Sabbath just to keep it kind of classic. And then hopefully we could both agree on like Slayer's Rain and Blood.
Totally. I mean, you could probably get him to listen to Glenn Danzig's classical record that he did a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah, that'd be a good one.
I mean, I feel like Cobra Commander would be into some Black Sabbath after the first couple of listens. Like maybe he might indoctrinate more people into it.
Yeah, again, like he's such a, it's funny, like going back to those cartoons and watching him as an adult, like you can see all the psychology behind a lot of it, the malignant narcissism and whatever. And, it's always just somebody else's fault with Cobra Commander. And even Zardzan, his file card originally did list him as a paranoid schizophrenic, which obviously they removed because that's frowned upon. But it's a lot of psychology, I think, went into the original cartoon. So yeah, there's some depth to these characters for sure.
In another universe where GI Joe doesn't exist, what genre would Cold Slither play?
Oh man, if we weren't trying to take over the minds of the young. You know what, man? Because they're, based out of, which I actually live like 3 miles from the Florida Everglades. I would think that they listen to like Southern rock, like, or would play like Southern, like old school, some Creedence, some Skinner, stuff like that, and I could even see. Yeah, that's another good idea. There's a lot, there's a lot of Cold Slither style ideas, but I could see some Southern rock coming out of Cold Slither.
Absolutely doing. I'd love to hear a Credence cover.
Man, that's yeah. I never even, man. You got a pretty good a covers album done Cold Slither style would be sick.
It would. It would.
Man, that's a great idea.
Uh, you mentioned how in the show the band is trying to indoctrinate the youth into Cobra. What would be the message today that Cold Slither would try and hypnotize the youth into?
Man, that's kind of a loaded question today because there's a lot of reality into that. There's a lot of, I mean, I don't know, man. That's a tough question to answer because, depending on what side you're on, you think that it's already happening. So, there's already, bubbles of fact. You know what I mean? Where you live in this bubble, there's a fact that this bubble doesn't adhere to. So, I would just imagine, man, they would align with whatever, with whatever, you know, at, whatever they'd want people to get into. There's probably already a side that they could jump into, and knowing that the way the Dreadnoughts are, they would play both sides. And whoever kind of paid them the most money is where they would go. So, they're mercenaries at heart. They really have no allegiance to anybody but themselves.
See, that's what's really dividing the country. Cobra's dividing the country.
Yeah, it's all Cobra. The plot is working.
I knew those 80s heavy metal records had hypnotizing messages in them if you played them backwards. Dang it, Tipper Gore was right.
It just took it took 40 years, but it worked.
What is one hidden gem, whether it be a band or an album from the 80s, that you think everyone should listen to?
Oh man. It's funny. I'm such a sucker for all of those like 80s one-hit wonder bands like God, I don't even know the names of half of them, but it's like you hear the songs and you know them, like ain't nobody gonna break in my stride, nobody gonna hold me down. Like whoever that is, I love that. It's like all of that super cheesy 80s like pop stuff that they had like one or two hits maybe. I love all that stuff. I love Human League. I love Simple Minds. Like I just love all that 80s stuff. As far as like metal, there were so few metal bands in the 80s that kind of most of them really kind of poke through. Um, but the guitar player Matt Harvey, he's much more into the super obscure 80s rock and metal stuff than I am. But I'm a sucker for all of that 80s pop stuff. Like, I just love all of it. I love Duran Duran. I just love all that stuff. It's not even a guilty pleasure. I'll admit it to anybody. I love all that. Depeche Mode. I love all that stuff.
I mean, anybody who doesn't like the Duran Duran album Rio is not living. You know what I mean?
You're just wrong. You're just wrong. It's okay to be wrong, but you're wrong.
Metal
Hold on.
has
I think Go ahead. No, I can hear you now.
all right. Metal has always thrived on rebellion, but which band or moment in metal history do you really feel has truly kind of redefined the boundaries for what is possible in the genre?
I mean, again, without even thinking about it, my answer to that is Slayer's Reign in Blood. I mean, in 1986, for a record that extreme to come out and just plow through everything else, I mean, it's a record that I still don't think has been topped to this day. And I think most any metal fan would agree with me. Everyone's tried, but Slayer's Reign in Blood was just the biggest, F you to the whole industry. Like, they just said, I don't care what you think. We're going to write the most extreme, aggressive music possible. Even the record company didn't want to release that record. And, and now it's obviously multi-platinum, genre defining, continues to, even young people, when they discover that record, are like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened in 1986. So yeah, Slayer's Reign in Blood still holds that title.
I mean, it's such a classic, and I can still tell you where I was in in one of my old friends' houses when we first listened to that album, and it was like, holy hell, how did they do that?
Yes. It's funny here. I bet you it's in here. Watch this. This is the copy that I bought when my mom gave my brother and I $5 each at the mall to go get a slice of pizza and a soda, and we went and bought this cassette, this actual very cassette, and we went home, took this thing out, stuck it in the tape player, and for the next 28 minutes, it was three of us, my brother, our friend Sean, and me. We didn't talk the entirety of the album. We just sat there like I was 10 years old at the time, and I just couldn't believe what I was hearing coming out of the speakers. And then, like, the cassette ended, all that rain and thunder's happening, and we flipped it over. We're like, oh my God, that's the whole album. And then we were just like, round two, and put it right back in and press play again. I mean, I get like you, I remember that moment very vividly. Hell, from that moment is why I'm sitting here talking to you, because it was in that moment I knew I want to play guitar, and this is what I want to do at 10 years old.
Damn, that's powerful, man. It's powerful.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to listen to that album. I'm gonna have to listen to it.
That cassette, it's interesting. My brother found it like when he was moving several years ago. He's like, dude, I found our copy of Slayer, Rain and Blood. I was like, the copy? He's like, yeah. I went, oh my God, that cassette legitimately changed my life. Like, my whole trajectory, which I'm still on currently, is because of that album. It's that impactful for me, for sure.
Wow. I mean, it's crazy because when I first listened to it, it was on it was on my friend's phone, and we rigged a makeshift speaker out of a paper towel roll, where if you cut a paper towel roll down the middle and you stick your phone, and it was pretty much the same thing. We were just listening in awe. like decades after it was released, the same kind of experience happened. I wonder how many thousands of people had the same thing happen to them.
I mean, it's funny. You can go on some of these YouTube videos and see like first time Slayer reaction videos, and everybody's just like, it's Slayer just does this thing where you're like, "Ugh." It just does this thing to you that no other band does. No other band does. And I don't care if they play faster, they play more aggressive, or they try to play more aggressive. It just, there was something about that record that just brings out this thing in you that you're just like, if you're open to it, you know what I mean? I see plenty of people hear that and they're like, oh my God, this is garbage. It's pure noise. But for those of us that it resonated with, like it just speaks to you in such a way, man. And, you know, it really, to me, it is. It's the record that it's the one moment in my life that I can really pinpoint and know for sure that dictated the path I went on. That moment.
Damn, that's powerful. It's powerful.
Yeah, man.
You know, there's a fine line between theatrical and ridiculous in metal and music in general. How do you walk that line with this Cold Slither project without falling into pure parody?
You know, that's a great question. I can tell you, and I think, you know, this comes from a couple of factors. Number one, I care deeply about G.I. Joe, like on a real deep level. And I also, as a songwriter, always want to write music that I think people are really going to resonate with. Lyrically, you know, yeah, that's where the kind of the tongue-in-cheek fun can be. Obviously, I knew this was going to be Hasbro, so I wasn't going to write a song like Cobra Commander Slaughters Children or anything like that. So, you know, I knew it was going to be fairly PC, but I had fun with it. I will say, man, some of the lyrics on the record kind of get a little deep. And, you know, you can play into that psychological profiling of, you know, these characters had real psychological issues. And I try to play into some of that and as, you know, kind of as soft as way as I could without getting really super dark. But I tried to definitely write the best music I could and good vocal melodies and catchy, you know, things that, you know, the listener will enjoy and remember. I guess my overall hope for the record is I would love for people to be like, oh, let me listen to the Cold Slither record. This is a lot of fun, and come away from it going, damn, this was actually a good album, and I want to listen to it again. Like, that's my hope.
And when does the record come out?
July 25th.
Nice. I will definitely be pre-saving it on Spotify. You know, when it comes to Cold Slither, if you could imagine Cold Slither opening for any band in history, what band do you think it would be?
Oh man, I mean, obviously, you know, you'd love to open for Slayer. Um, you know, I think kind of any kind of classic heavy metal band, you know, Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth. Yeah, I mean, any of those kind of classic Judas Priest, Iron Maiden. You know, I'd love to think that those fans, again, I think goes back to like, I would love to think that fans would listen to the Cold Slither record again as like, oh, let's listen to this fun, you know, idea and come away from it going, man, that was actually some solid killer metal that I want to listen to more. So, you know, that's the eventually, and ultimately that is up to you, the listener, to decide if I wrote good enough songs. So we'll see.
All right. And my last question here, what is the most metal thing about G.I. Joe to you?
Oh, well, obviously Cold Slither. I mean, I mean, the fact that, in 1985, and this, you weren't around obviously, but in 1985, there was this whole like, there's satanic subliminal messages in records, and Ozzy Osbourne was getting sued and all this crazy thing that somebody at whoever was writing these G.I. Joe episodes was like, let's do an episode about that, to put subliminal messages in music and make it a heavy metal band, with the long hair and heavy metal machine. Like, I just love that they fully went there. Like they fully went there. So yeah, Cold Slither is definitely the most metal thing about G.I. Joe.
All right. Thank you for the time. It was wonderful talking to you, Gus.
Thanks, Ray. I appreciate it, buddy, man. Have a great day, buddy.
You too.